If you have an interruption in system operation, act right away to fix it. It may be that you go to an alternate repeater. It may be that you go to simplex. You know, if you're on the VHF, UHF spectrum, you may have to change bands if you're on HF. If equipment has a malfunction, have a spare ready to go, know how to use the spare. Make sure your spare is good to go. Okay. Minor field repair. Some of that stuff is really hard now. I mean, radios have gotten so small, I can't see inside them anymore. You know, and it can't be my eyes. It's got to be the equipment getting smaller. But you really can't get in there and just, change the tube or whatever it happens to be. You just can't do that anymore. But you can have coax. Maybe it's exposed outside, or maybe, as has happened, your coax is outside and somebody decides to move it, disconnect it, cut it, run over it, whatever they happen to do. So you can replace coax. You can do those kind of repairs.
So it's more mechanical now than electronic.
Yes, it is, absolutely. Battery replacement. Okay. How many people have handhelds? How many have an extra battery? How many have a clamshell where you can put AA's, AAA's in? All right. Good planning, great. Absolutely. You plan for battery replacement. Bring extra AA's or AAA's with you. Okay.
You'd also want to set up a schedule to change out batteries to recharge too.
Yeah. Again, that
and
comes
indoctrinate the people to come back at this time or at the beginning of your shift and swap out batteries.
Yes,
you can.
yes, definitely.
And
that's a good
batteries
plan.
are a major problem in public safety all the time. For the radios they use every day, they just don't maintain them. They think they can get 10 years of life out of a NICAD battery. No, it doesn't happen.
Or
The capacity drops, then they think they're having radio problems.
Yeah. There's something wrong with my radio.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
The interconnected cables for the 12 volts would go into power pole type connections, the red and black ones, so everything's interchangeable.
Yeah. Good point also, very definitely. Okay. And again, these are some other tasks that the AEC needs to participate in or needs to be aware of that you may participate in these. Obviously, coordinating with the AEC manager. Okay. Sometimes what you need to do changes, whether it's coverage, whether it's type of traffic, so on and so forth. It may be something as simple as switching from a Skywarn type net to a damage assessment. Okay. But you need to coordinate that. People need to know you're doing it, and you again work through the AEC manager and the COML to respond to the situation as it changes. You also need to know what other resources may be coming. It may be that you've only got a limited amount of equipment for that particular task, but additional tasks have been added. You may have to sit there and say, well, right now we can't do that, but this is coming in, and in 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever, we'll be able to handle that. So you need to know what else is coming in. Briefings, planning meetings, highly encouraged that you participate in those when you can, without being obtrusive, without forcing yourself onto the other ICS positions. Okay. A lot of times, and this is happening more and more, at least the AEC manager is being invited to meetings. And then you'll have a meeting with the AEC manager to find out what they want you to do. And that's happening more and more often.
So instead of a meeting within the AEC component, would you recommend then having an internal briefing within the AEC component of the entire operation. So all the staff hear the same information at the same time
Yeah.
instead of one-on-one
Yeah.
type meetings.
Well, that's a meeting briefing, yeah. Same thing. Yeah, very definitely. Okay, I talked about the 214 unit log. Some of the different things you can put on there, equipment locations, medical evacuations, personnel changes, so on and so forth. These are all things that pertain to your unit. Now, if there's several AECs working in the same area, it's not necessary that each one maintain their own 214. But if you're sent out by yourself to a remote site, then yeah, you're going to want one for yourself. Okay. Again, there's a word up there. Well, let me see if I can get this thing to work. That word there.
Illegible.
Legible. Okay. Not only if it isn't in writing, it didn't happen. If I can't read it, it didn't happen. Okay. Legible. You have to be able to read it. Okay. Now, myself, my handwriting is terrible. And if I write something, 2 days later, I have no idea what it was. So I either do it on an iPad or a laptop or I print. Okay. But it has to be legible. Okay. Again, the documentation is critical. You mentioned earlier, keeping track of hours. Okay. Why is it so important to keep track of hours, volunteer hours?
Well, that could be a 5-minute discussion about.
Well, real quick, but
Well, the volunteer hours can be used to offset state share when there's a federal
exactly.
declaration.
That's what I was looking
That's
for.
the number
Exactly.
one. Yes.
Also, if the area has been declared by the president as a disaster area, and all of a sudden now you can get FEMA money back. I've used the 214s for that, saying.
Yeah, that's the offsetting the
Yeah.
Right, okay.
the cost share,
Right. For
Exactly.
either the local or the state.
Sure. Okay.
Exactly. And when FEMA audits things like that,
They asked the
they like to see their log, their form, 214.
Right.
And it makes it a lot easier if everybody's uniform, if everybody's doing the same thing. Demobilization, which is something we started thinking about as soon as we started mobilizing. Okay. You do not actually begin the physical demobilization until you're told to by the AEC manager or COMEL. Okay. Make sure you let people who are working for you know what the demobilization plans, procedures, and policies are. What are you going to do? Turn in and complete your ICS forms. Again, that may be the 214, it may be whatever other forms that they have you using for a particular incident. Okay, but complete them, fill them in. Don't just walk away. Okay. Make sure that any lost, damaged equipment, so on and so forth, is documented appropriately. One of the reasons for that, if I give out a bunch of handhelds, when they get turned in, if one of them has a broken antenna connector, if it got dropped in the case crack, whatever happened, I need to know about it. So we can repair it, replace it, whatever it happens to be, and get it ready for next time. So, again, document what happened there. Okay. Get all that information, forms, and so on and so forth to the AEC manager. Another important point in demobilization is make sure that the AEC manager knows what your plans are for getting home. What time you're expected to get there. One of the things that when we deploy people, we have them check back in when they get home, so we know they got there safely. Again, you're kind of responsible for people until they're back home safe, back where they started from. And various agencies and organizations are going to have some unique demobilization procedures. And if you're with one of those organizations, make sure that you follow that. I know that when we have somebody come in to help us out, okay, we have our procedures for demobilization. And a lot of times when they go back to their parent agency, there's demobilization procedures there. So you almost have to go through it twice in some cases. But again, it's critical so everybody knows what's going on, how they can do it, where people are, what the status is, and get things ready for next time.
Quick question.
Sure.
Concerning equipment, if your AECs are using their own personal equipment, you haven't issued them any, but they have a loss or a damage, should you still collect that information from them?
I prefer to, yes. And one of the reasons for that, sometimes you can help them out in replacing it, okay, depending on the particular situation. If they've used, you know, a mobile unit and for some reason they took it out of their vehicle and they set it up in a tent and a tornado came through and wiped it out, you may be able to do something for them. Okay, so yeah, I would prefer to have that documented.
Okay.
And again, sometimes that can become part of the whole cost factor. Depends on how your agency and your state handles that a lot of times. You know.
Well, if nothing else, they've got a documented loss for their income taxes.
Well, yeah, there's another. That's good. That's good. Okay. So an AEC manager, in addition to all the things that we expect from the AEC communicator, the AEC manager has some additional tasks. The manager, of course, is going to have a go kit like everybody else. Okay. It's going to have some additional stuff. For instance, the Tactical Interoperable Communication Plan, the TICP, the local TICP. Okay. Manager should have that, should be familiar with it. Okay. And the TICPs, of course, are unique to specific areas. And has everybody seen one? Y'all know what they are? Okay, we'll get some so you can see them a little bit later. Okay. The AEC manager, again, responsible to coordinate with the ComL and other people, assuring that they share information, that people know what's going on, they have that common operating picture. Again, the more people know what's going on and what is expected of them, the better job they're going to do. You don't want to just sit somebody down there and say, all right, talk on this radio. Here's the situation. Here's what we're supporting. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Okay? And a lot of this is going to come out of the briefings from the Planning P, from the IAP, from the 201. Create that work environment that provides diversity and equal opportunity for everybody. Okay? Kind of, again, common sense. But you want to make maximum use of the people with the skill sets they have. You want to give everybody a chance to do something. You don't necessarily want to have somebody sitting doing the same thing all the time. You want to give them an opportunity to succeed. So you got to create that work environment. And it's not necessarily an easy thing to do. Okay? It takes a little bit of getting to know people, assessing them, figuring out what they can do, what they like to do. Sometimes you may deliberately want to get them out of their comfort zone and into doing something different. But there's a lot to that. And that's one of the manager's tasks, is to kind of, like any supervisor or any manager, you want to bring the best out in your people, but you want to make sure everybody has a fair shot at everything. Safety. That is probably one of the most important things that the AEC manager does, is provide for safety. On field day, okay, everybody's participating in field day. How many people have a safety officer designated at their field day site? Okay. Does that safety officer have the authority to shut everything down?
Yes.
Okay. That's important. Okay. having a safety officer, having that authority, and the manager can be the safety officer or may not be, but the manager is responsible for making sure that things are safe. Okay. Look for hazardous situations, okay? And you may laugh, but we had an incident last year where we had some floods in Memphis, and one of the things that the safety officers put out to all people in the field, and we had AECs in the field, was to watch out for alligators and snakes. Very significant, very important. And it turns out that we had some folks set up in a Walmart parking lot, and it had been flooded, and there was an alligator in a puddle in the back of the parking lot, small one. So you do have to watch out for that stuff. Okay. Make sure that any hazards, there's precautions. People are warned about it, they know where they are. They're marked if possible. Okay. If authorized by the local jurisdiction, the COML, the EMA, whatever it happens to be, identifying vests, lights, flashlights, glow sticks, things like that, if they're authorized. Blood pressure medication or something like that, you need to make sure that they got the medication with them, that they're taking it. You don't want to have some kind of incident within the incident. Sometimes a COML will have no clue as to what we can do. Well, they'll be looking at AEC communicators as those guys, but you're here. So the manager may need to be able to articulate and clearly explain what we can do and what we can't do. Because we're not the answer to everything. As much as sometimes we like to think we are, we're not. Okay? So we need to be able to explain what we can do, what we can't do, what we can do operationally, technically, not necessarily getting into all the wonderful technical details and buttons and everything on the latest IC 7800, but the fact that we can get a message from here to there, yeah, okay. Can we get a picture from here to there? Yeah, we can do that. Okay. Those are the kind of technical things that, switch my hat around from the public service side, that's what we're looking at. Okay. I don't care, again, from the public service side, I don't care how you do it. I just want to know, can you do it? And if you got to send a carrier pigeon, that's okay too. I'm not going to worry about it, but do it for me. Okay, the manager, however, has to know the technical side so that when that EMA guy comes up and says, I need to get this picture from here to there, he's designed the system and knows how to do it. He's got a system that can do it. He's got a plan. Okay. ICS 205. We're going to get into that later in depth, but that is your communications plan. Okay. The AEC manager needs to know how to develop a 205, what goes into the 205. Every auxiliary communicator needs to know how to read a 205, understand it, and apply it. Okay, now we're going to talk real quick about the Go Kit. And I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of stuff on this. How many people have Go Kits? Okay, how many of you have them with you? Oops. Okay. Yeah, in the car, okay. All right. Some of the things that you need to have in there, of course, personal stuff, right? Kind of obvious, cash. Cash is important. There may be no ATMs working. Okay. You may go into a store to pick up lunch or something, and if there's no electricity, you can't swipe that card. Of course, the people in the store may not know how to make change using cash anymore because, it tells them, but, you can do that for them. That's where the gray hair or the no hair comes in handy. We learned how to do that. Appropriate clothing, okay, sunscreen, moisturizer, hand wipes, gel, all these things for personal care. Okay. This is a little bit of a review, but it's important to make sure that you have these things, that you're ready to go. First aid kit, any medications, have spare medications. Flashlights, keys, foul weather gear, a repeater directory. Very, very handy to have. That little ARRL repeater directory. Probably not a bad idea to have a couple of them.
You might want to change that to a current repeater directory. I had some guys show up with 5 and 10-year-old ones, and there's some differences there.
Okay. Beverages, snack items, waterproof mattress candles. Again, I'm not going to read everything here, but a lot of this stuff, if you take everything, you're going to need a small truck. Okay. You got one, okay. But think logically through it, okay? If you've got a kit you're going to deploy, say, within your county, okay, you may not need as much as if you're going to go down to Mississippi. So think it through. Again, go back to finding out what the situation is when you're en route, okay? Find out what you're going to run into. You may be going down to a place where hotels are available and they're going to put you up. Well, okay, let's skip the tent, mattress, pillow, so on and so forth. Or you may be going down to some place where it's pretty primitive conditions and you're going to need that stuff. So adjust it accordingly, but you should have it available to adjust. Again, all your ICS forms, PANs, GPS, your radios. If you have to bring your own radios, they should tell you. If radios are going to be there all set up, they should tell you that. Again, ask questions, find out beforehand. Programming equipment. I don't know about you guys, but most of the handhelds and even a lot of the mobiles nowadays, if you try and do those, it's so tedious to put in just one repeater. Try and program, the D-Star into a handheld, trying to go like that. It's a lot easier. You got the laptop, you got the cable, the software, do it. And you can make up the programs and clone them to radios so you're all the same too, which is a big handy thing. Patch cords, power supplies, antenna analyzer, safety glasses, okay, nice, BOM meter, climbing harness. I don't carry one of those around because I don't climb anymore. I quit that. Soldering iron, okay. Other than a 110-volt soldering iron, might not have power. So what kind would you bring?
Battery operated.
Butane.
12 volt butane.
Okay, yeah, butane, car, 12 volt, good. Duct tape fixes everything. RF connectors. It's also a good idea to know how to use the stuff. Okay, know how to solder. Know how to put a connector on a coax. Okay, very handy.
Super glue. For fingers that you cut with your knife when you're cutting cables and you're alone.
Good point, super glue.
Used it.
Yep, that works, good point.
Still have the tip of my finger for that.
Okay.
Have someone else do it.
It's good to have an IFOG, any local or state field operation guides, local system coverage maps, and we're going to talk more again about these, the NIFOG and some of the the state guides too, and we'll show you some examples. The manager probably needs to have some additional information, okay, the current TIC-P and the SCIP, some additional ICS forms that everybody else doesn't have, contact information. Again, if you're deploying, say, as a team and one of you is designated as the manager, you probably need to know contact information for some of the other AEC folks in the area you're going to. Okay, plain language. Under NIMS, you're not supposed to use anything other than plain language. You're not supposed to use acronyms. NIMS is an acronym. Okay. For us, what's really important is don't be using Q signals unless you're on CW, okay, where they're commonly understood. 10 codes, especially abbreviations, especially local abbreviations, okay. You have people working with you from out of state, they're not going to know. From out of your county, they're not going to know. Plain language. Local time. Okay. I don't know what the protocols are for your different counties or even for your state, but most places I've been specify you use local time, 24-hour format. Even states like Tennessee where we have 2 time zones, local time, and we just designated whether it's Eastern or Central, but you use local times. Okay. But plain language is really, really critical. Okay. It can make a difference with lives because local abbreviations can get confusing. What may be common spelling to you is not necessarily common spelling to me. Use the phonetic alphabet. Don't be using all these fancy things that people like to use when they're working DX and so on and so forth, okay? Use the phonetic alphabet, the standard phonetic alphabet. Anybody not familiar with this? Okay. So when is AEC support needed? Okay. Obviously, if all communications have failed, yeah, it's needed. But more importantly, and this is where most of the time AEC communications come in, systems get overloaded, there's a lot more traffic that can be handled, or maybe from the public service side, I don't necessarily want to put some of my assets, say, in a shelter. Okay. There's a support function there. There's an auxiliary function, which is why one of the reasons we call it auxiliary communications, that we need that support. Don't get in the mindset of sitting around just waiting for everything to fail.